As a Scottish person, it should come as no surprise to you that today I want to talk about the Scottish. Oh, wait, no, sorry. The British referendum. It's British independence, the independence from the European Union, and how the fact that now the Remain camp want us to have another referendum because they lost. There doesn't appear to be another reason. That is their entire argument, is that they lost, so they want to get another referendum. But one thing at a time. First, we're going to focus on why I think Britain should leave the EU and why I'm glad the referendum went in the favour of leave. This is going to be a quick sort of informal video, so I'm just going to cover points quickly. First off, the EU is corrupt. Insanely so. One of the things that was discussed during the debate was that it's almost impossible to vote for EU representatives. People then were like, oh, well, no, we can vote for EMPs and... wait, no, sorry, MEPs, I think it was. And about how we can vote for these people, but they didn't mention the fact that they had the lowest voter turnout, and there was very little discussion on those members. They also didn't discuss the rest of the European Union, which was not influenced by voter power. Then, whenever there was talks of... well, this is one thing that actually really frustrated me about the Leave campaign, was that they would use grand figures. They would use strong rhetoric. But then they wouldn't have the facts to back up. They wouldn't sit down and find a way to make sure it was waterproof before they put these numbers out there. And then the Remain campaign would just sit and pick away at them and just undermine them and say, oh, look, the Leave's all lies. This is why we're going to have a tsunami or a second ice age when we leave the EU. But that's the thing that really actually annoyed me the most about this, was that the entire Remain campaign was, no, sit down, behave. There's EU corruption. Oh yeah, well, our own government's corrupt. Really? No. Compared to the EU government, not even remotely. Oh, well, we can't vote for politicians. Oh yeah, well, there's like the House of Lords. And it's like, that's not the House of Lords' function. The House of Lords picks through what people want to vote on and then pass. Like, that's completely different from the way the EU works. But whenever it came to talks about immigration, so we want to limit immigration because we believe it's just detrimental to our country. People will say things like, oh, well, there's not actually been that many immigrants, and the amount that came in last year was only like 0.5%, and like nitty things like this, or oh, the only reason you want to prevent immigration is because you're a racist. And this was the Remain campaign over and over again. We want to leave the EU because we believe that we're safer outside the EU. Oh yeah, well, we're safer in the EU. Really? Has Germany prevented mass amounts of refugees? Has the immigrants we've taken in from all these dangerous and violent countries recently helped the EU in any way? Has it made us safer? No, it's not. In fact, any place where there's been high immigration, like where people have settled from immigration, rising crime, rising rape rates. Rottingham is the perfect example of this. But no, nobody wants to talk about it because it's rude, it's impolite, it's racist. And it really, really gets to me. So there's a bunch of reasons there. Corruption within the EU, uncontrollable immigration, which is also leading to rising terrorism, which we struggle to control. People say, oh, we can decide who comes in our borders, but we can't decide the number. We actually struggle to decide who comes in our borders because the EU have quotas on us. But again, these sort of things just weren't brought up very often. The Remain camp were too busy saying, oh no, it's because you're a racist. And it's like, no, these people are not assimilating. If you let in 1 million people into a country, they will not assimilate. They will not fit in with the culture. They will not become part of the country. They will not add to the country and help develop the country's culture. They will simply block themselves off and keep their own culture. I mean, even in America, you had places like Chinatown. You had examples of immigrants coming in and just not integrating at first. Sometimes it takes a couple of generations. So when you have almost uncontrollable immigration, when you just have people flooding across the borders, they don't become part of society. They just create their own hubs of society. And because they're then seen as outsiders, because they refuse to integrate properly, it causes to rising tensions within the country. But all of this is waved away because people don't even really like the British culture that much, and you're just being racist, and it's globalism, multiculturalism. These don't work. Globalism does not work. Multiculturalism does not work. You cannot have multiple cultures. You have one culture and then you have another culture. You don't have multiple cultures that sort of merge together. You have one or another. You can't have multiple cultures. You can even see this in Turkey. There are two cultures in Turkey. There are the people in Turkey who've accepted Western values, and then the people in Turkey who follow Islamic values. And there's a distinct divide in Turkey. If you talk to anybody who's spent any amount of time in Turkey, they will tell you the same thing. It's one of the strong reasons for why it's one of the strong reasons why Turkey has not yet joined the EU, and it's one of the strong reasons that people are worried about Turkey joining the EU, because it's divided in itself. Another thing brought up by the Leave campaign, another potential problem. But again, it's the idea of, well, we're better together, we're better to work together for a better world, for a world without borders. Put 50 people in a room, and after 8 hours, see if they're all still sitting in a circle talking to each other. No, they separate off into different groups. To think that the entire world can work together as sort of one big bubble with no borders, no nations, no boundaries, is absolute madness. Because if one person doesn't decide to go along with it, then there you go, you've got a problem just there. But even if you put that aside, even if it was some sort of magical thing, if that people could just get along with each other because you think they should get along with each other, the idea of a globalist society, one where everybody's on an equal footing, that's generally what when people talk about globalism, they're not talking about people cooperating globally. They're not talking about people trading across large spaces of land. That's been done for years, millennia. Like, even before the Indian Trading Company, people were trading across all the way across Asia, all the way across Africa. That was always being done before. But no, what they want now is people want the EU to help make everybody more equal. They want to improve the quality of life for tons of people. And this is what I seem to see a lot with a lot of Remain voters, is they actually want to make everybody equal. They want to make everybody the same. But if you want to create a society where everybody's equal, where everybody's in the same playing field, you're doing it wrong. You're dragging down the rich to make up for the mistakes of the poor. You're dragging down the smart, preventing them from getting education and opportunity they need, to try and pull up the dumb and try to make them feel better about themselves. You're creating a world of mediocrity where nothing's excellent and nothing's bad, everything's just alright. And sure, that feels nice, but it's not going to advance the human race, it's not going to advance society, it's not going to make things better in the long run. It's just making things nice. And in the end, that's why I'm so frustrated and annoyed at the entire Remain campaign. It's why I'm now so annoyed that they're wanting to have a second referendum. They believe they are morally correct to stay in the EU. They believe it's morally correct to let in all these refugees. Everything comes down to feelings and if it's the morally correct thing to do. It doesn't matter if it's the logical thing to do. It doesn't matter if it's the excellent long-term thing to do. None of this matters. They just sit down and focus on, how do I feel about this? Does this feel like it's the right thing to do? The Remain campaign was focused on racism, Islamophobia, and comfort. When it came to the EU, it was, do you know what's important? The fact that if we stay in the EU, we make like a bunch of money and stuff. Like if we were to leave the EU, we just wouldn't be able to trade with anybody. That's not how trade agreements work. You don't just leave the European Union and everybody in Europe then refuses to trade with the UK. If we were some absolutely tiny country, then that might happen. But even in that situation, I would still want to vote leave. Just for the fact that it's then dragging us up. We would then be the poor people. And that's what ended up, the argument was being not whether or not we should be separate from the EU, to be independent, to make our own decisions, to try and make our own way in the world. It came down to, so are we rich or are we poor? Are we the ones getting dragged down or getting pulled up? It shouldn't matter. We shouldn't have to have a debate on whether we're getting dragged down or pulled up. We should be the one able to make those decisions. Maybe if people stopped trying to lead a comfortable life and tried to live a successful life, this referendum would have been a lot easier. And we wouldn't get this now violent moral backlash. Because what? Because the opposing side was apparently racist and stupid? Come on, Remain. Give me a good reason to stay in the EU. To end this video and to further cement the points I've made, I'm going to look at this picture here that came out just before the referendum and really frustrated me. That why the UK sends 350 million a week to the EU. No, we don't. That's apparently the truth. Just no, we don't. You're being dumb. British laws are made by unelected EU bureaucrats. No, they aren't. Actually, that's not the lie. The lie is that laws are made by unelected EU bureaucrats, which is correct, and that we can't reject those laws, which is also correct. The EU is not democratic. It is democratic, is apparent truth. No, it's not. They have 4 presidents. We can't affect who those presidents are. They're just picked by EU bodies, by their rich aristocracy that is across there in the EU. The EU is not democratic. It takes seconds to figure this out. And I apologise if this sounds like it's being jump cut. It's not. I just talk like this when I'm going back and forth. Turkey has joined the EU. Actually, it might. Saying no it isn't is just a blatant lie. There's the possibility it will. What happens if it does? The EU could force the UK to give up its rebate. I honestly never heard this one, so I don't even know if this is true or not. But this, no it can't, all 20 nations have to agree, including us. No, they wouldn't. EU is not democratic, remember? The EU could force the UK to help with future Eurozone bailouts. Yes, it can. Yes, it almost did. Remember the part where the EU just suddenly gave us a £2 billion bill? Like just £2 billion bill we had to pay for no reason. What was that for? What was that money used for? Was it to bail anybody out? Was it to help with any other countries that we were trying to drag up? The UK has given up its ability to veto EU treaties. This is another misframed lie, quote unquote, because it's not the UK has given up its ability to veto EU treaties. The UK has had no influence. This was one of the common points was the EU has voted on, I think it was 30 plus decisions, and each of them have been rejected. The UK is unable to actually influence the EU for its favour, which is true. But no, they're just gonna change the wording and say it's a lie. But again, even up to this point, there's no reasons, there's no return arguments made. It's just actually you're wrong. There will be an EU army. There is going to be an EU army. And there can't be one without the UK's agreement. Remember, the EU is not democratic. The EU will push it through and then try to get us to agree, which is one of the good reasons that we're leaving. Another one, fewer than 750,000 Brits live elsewhere in Europe. And then, this is the part that just blows my mind. Turkey has joined the EU. Oh, no it isn't. Here's a number of Brits that live elsewhere in Europe. There's a bunch more that could possibly live there in Europe. The second last point is also correct. Congratulations. But the EU is not a bloc state. It is not a nation. Countries in the European Union need us more individually than we need the European Union's trade agreements. We can still trade with those countries. We do not need the EU to be able to trade with those countries. However, the countries inside the EU need us more than we need them because we can go out and trade with other people. We can go and take our business elsewhere. Those countries inside the European Union are going to want to make trade agreements with us after we leave. which is already being done. You can already see it. Germany pushing to get a trade agreement through as quick as possible. Like, once we leave, they want to be able to trade with us again. So, this is a misframed question. And again, this comes back to what I've said. The Leave campaign made strong points and failed to back them up. Just let the Remain camp completely reframe the question and make us look like idiots. But again, none of this gives any reason why we should stay in the EU. This entire piece right here isn't saying, we should stay in the EU because it's the better thing to do, because it will allow us to be more democratic, allows us this, it gives us this opportunity, it gives us this, it gives us this. The only single argument used by Remain was, we might lose money. It's more comfortable to stay. The Leave party are racist, Islamophobic, bigoted fools. You can now see the Remain campaign repeating like a parrot the same things that were said. You're racist, you're Islamophobic, you're a bigot, you're a fool. And they point to things like, look at the economy just plummeted, the stock markets went down, and oh wait, the stock market's recovered. Oh wait, the pound recovered, almost entirely. But no, none of this is all pushed aside, that's not important. What's important is you're a racist bigot. What's important is Nigel Farage said that, maybe that money we sent to the EU might not go to the NHS. Of course it might not. That was something that we said we're not going to put all that money in, because of course you can't decide that's what's going to happen with the money. It's just that money that's now going to the EU won't be going to the EU anymore. It will have to be decided on. But no. Let's not use common sense. Let's just use the moral high ground to sit and spit on the now majority and call the majority bigoted and racist. Absolutely disgusting. What's even more repulsive is the idea that the Remain campaign will actually sit and call the elderly people who showed out in the masses to vote for the country to try and gain back the UK's independence in some way so that it can take control of its borders, take control of its trade, protect itself from terrorism, and start putting itself first again. And start not listening to this false idea that globalism is a good idea, that we need to pull the rich down and pull up the poor so that it can try succeed. But instead, no. You're racist. You're a bigot. We want to sit for our comfortable lives and just sling insults instead of try to push for change. This entire campaign, this entire event, this entire vote has just left me absolutely drained, because it just feels like I'm fighting against people who don't have any goals, direction, or just end game. They have no final aim. They're just looking to see who throws the most dirt at each other, the person who complains the loudest. Instead of saying, I want this to happen, I want us to aim for these goals, I believe in these things and I'm fighting for them, they just complain. They just call people racist. They just insult people. I'm sick and tired of it. My side won this debate. And still, if I go on Facebook, I feel if I say something, people are going to come and be morally offended and get outraged and attack me. What is this mad society that we're creating? Where people believe not just that they're entitled to their opinion, but their opinion is entitled to be taken seriously and to be taken as fact and to be implemented. What can you do? Just gotta keep fighting. Just gotta keep trying to push for some sort of freer society today. Just gonna try push for the things I believe in, whilst fighting people who just sit and complain and have no end game, have no real goal. They just complain endlessly. This is the Arrogant Godking, and I'll be back.